Hello, everyone. Welcome to ACTE and PACE, our division of our Leadership and Awards Lunch Talks. Today, we have a very special guest with us, and I'm excited to hear from her. Carrie and I are just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping first, and then we're going to introduce you to Dr. Burns. So really excited to have everyone here today. Carrie, is there anything that you would want to say here?
Yeah, we're excited to host these lunch talks, and Andrea and I were in the ECMC PLSP program together. So that's kind of how we met. And we are really excited to have you on today's lunch talks. We've been hosting these monthly. And so Andrea and I, even though we live across the country from each other, we're excited to have you on. And we would always encourage you to check out the post-secondary leadership success program as well.
That's super, Carrie. Excited, just so excited that we get to spend a little bit of time with you. So what I want to visit about, and I think what you all came to hear today, is about influence and about our PACE, our national PACE actually award for the Innovation Award. And Dr. Burns has won that award previously, so we'll get her to visit with us in a moment about that. But from a leadership perspective, when you think of influence, if you don't mind, just drop your name and your email in the chat and share with us what you think of when you think of how to use influence and how you've used it as a professional. Okay, you can unmute your mic as well and share with us, or you can drop it in the chat, or both. We'd love to hear from you about influence. So, of course, Mark and I know, thank you so much for sharing. Mark and I know John Maxwell's work, and John believes that, you know, he's the #1 leadership guru in the world, and he believes that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And he says that quite often. So what do you think of when you think of influence and how you've used influence?
And I would have responded earlier. I'm sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time.
It's okay.
That's a multitasking I'm not capable of. So I was trying to get my email address in there. I think for me, you know, and of course I have a pretty similar view as John and Andrea does as well. But for me, it really all comes back around to relationships and how you build those. I think the common ground and the values that you can share with people that you know are part of your tribe, and really even knowing who's part of your tribe and who's not meant to be a part of your tribe. You're not going to influence people that aren't meant to be a part of your tribe or that don't jive with you in some way. And so I think that influence is really important in how we get things done with and through other people.
With and through other people. That's a mouthful. Perfect, Mark. Yeah, so true. So I think of our career of CTE, and maybe how did you use your influence inside CTE to help others? What do you think Andrea, about that, Carrie?
Andrea, we have Michelle in the chat says influence can be used to encourage and promote positive change. And this is how she's always tried to use it, which I think is great.
Definitely. You can use your powers for evil or good, can't you, with influence? That is so true. And I really appreciate you saying that about using them for positive, only positive motion, forward motion. I really like that. That's good. Really good thinking. Anyone else? What are your thoughts about using them in CTE? I know I've used them. I'm sure Dr. Burns and others have used them in CTE to be able to make relationships with business and industry so that our students could do some meaningful work. That's really important when you're working with companies or you're trying to use your influence with a grantor even to try to have conversation about how to get funding for a particular effort. Using your influence in a positive way, as we heard earlier. That's really good.
Yeah, I like hearing that, because I think we've all seen influence be used for personal gain, and I think that's when it's seen as a negative.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
And I think in using your influence to help students is really important too. So creating those partnerships to positively help students is always the goal that we look at when we're designing programs and things to work on.
Definitely, Carrie. We need to keep that in mind constantly when we're trying to help those students. Really good. So the next thing that we want to talk about, of course, is I'm trying to go, here we are, to our guest leader. I just want to share that, you know, Carrie and I, when we originally embarked on this idea of using the ECMC relationship, the ECMC Foundation relationship to be able to be awarded a mini grant through them, like Carrie mentioned earlier, to do these professional development sessions. You know, we sat down and we probably did a lot of thinking and internal thinking about how we could connect concepts and leadership to the actual award, because we had some award winners inside PACE that had never been heard from. You know, they do this great work, they receive this fantastic award, and then we don't ever hear from them or hear from them about their project or what they were thinking when they made that project. And so, you know, we had a real short list there that we were working on of people that are really what I would consider a positive influence in CTE, and had won one of our national PACE awards. And Dr. Janet Burns, I'm thrilled that she's with us today, is one of those people. And so we want to hear from her and hear from her program. I'll pull it up in a moment. Let me just share with you, Carrie, are you going to do the introduction for Dr. Burns, or would you like for me to?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Andrea.
Okay, super. So Dr. Burns is a program coordinator for the initial teacher certification in CTE in the Department of Middle and Secondary Education at Georgia State University. Now we're going to hear from her in a moment. She tried to retire and they begged her to come back. So Burns, who holds a doctorate in education, designed an alternative initial CTE teacher certification program 20 years ago, maybe a little more now, that she currently manages for TNI and health science education teachers. With only 3 certification programs in Georgia, this option has been vital for the underserved population and has been instrumental in the education and certification of hundreds of CTE teachers. To date, the program has graduated 2 county-level CTE directors, several assistant principals and CTE school supervisors and department chairs, and a number of award-winning teachers. She has served on several CTE program advisory committees. I know that firsthand. I've got the opportunity to serve with you a little bit, Dr. Burns, and it's been just a pleasure, as well as those regional education policy committees of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Examiners for the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, and the Board of Directors for the TNI educators, even in Georgia. As the president of the Academy for Career and Technical Teacher Education, Burns evaluated symposium conference proposals and served as a symposium facilitator and judge at 3 of their national professional development conferences. She has been involved with ACTE research and other research entities, presenting papers and editing journals and reviewing manuscripts. She's also served as a state-level judge. Mark, you'll be proud to hear this, for Skills USA. She was very involved with Skills USA and the Georgia Career Student Association competitions. She's not only a fine educator whose students rave about her courses and teaching, but she's also an accomplished researcher and national and state leader in her field. And that's a quote from Dana Fox, the chair of middle and secondary education. We welcome you, Dr. Burns, and we can't wait to hear from you today.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop share on that one, and I'm going to pick up another one for you all.
Okay. And Andrea, if you'd like to go ahead and put my presentation up, perfect. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So here's what we're going to talk about just very briefly, using the power of influence. And I'm going to combine that with some information about that PACE Innovation Award. Okay, you can flip it. And just as a brief background, this was the day that I won the award. It was in San Antonio, Texas at Vision in 2018. And I don't know if you can see the award, but it is beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And it was quite an exciting day for me. So, okay, you can flip that forward.
Bet.
Okay, so I've got a few objectives for us, just 4 of them. I want to make sure that we can define innovation, since we're going to be talking about that innovation award. I'm going to talk about just a couple of core soft skills that you would use as an influencer to get an innovation implemented. I'm going to talk about a few strategies for influencing others in your organization, whether it's a business or an educational organization. And I want you at the end to understand a little bit about the PACE Innovation Award criteria, in case you would like to nominate yourself, or you know somebody that you would like to nominate for this next go around. Okay, Andrea. All right, so first of all, what is innovation? And it is the process of striving to develop novel solutions to some of our most complex, pressing problems. And the problem that I attacked in Georgia was that we didn't have enough programs for teacher education, for trade and industrial teachers, and for healthcare science teachers. So that was my complex, pressing problem. And then it's also the actions that are required to create these new ideas, the processes or products, which when implemented lead to what's already been said by one of our participants. I'm so glad they said it's for positive, effective change. So great minds, of course, think alike. We all know that as career technical educators. All right, Andrea. Okay, so sometimes people are a little confused. How is innovation different than maybe an invention? So if you invent something, that requires the creation of new ideas, processes, or products, but innovation moves it one step further. And what it requires is the implementation of that innovative of that inventive undertaking. And this is where we really need to know how to use some influence. Okay, Andrea? Okay, so I just picked 5 soft skills to talk with you briefly about that I think are important if you want to be an influencer. And I think that these 5 are key. And of course, there are many others, but really influencers of business or educational innovation have to have some core soft skills that effectively position them to be recognized as leaders in their organization. So I'm just going to say a very little bit about each of these, because I realize this is a 15 to 20-minute window that I've got here, and I could go on forever. And I'm sure you could too. So credibility. So, you know, to use influence, you really have to be kind of known as the industry leader or a go-to expert in your field, whether your field is education or business. In order to be credible, you are kind of at the top of your field, or you're known as that. And your organization, whether it's the educational institution you work for, or the business you work for, or maybe your field in general, will recognize you as a voice of authority. And when you're recognized that way, that's your credibility, and really exciting things can happen when you've got innovative ideas. And of course, to be an influencer of an innovation, you would need to have visibility. So as you know, that visibility may come from work in your community. Maybe it's work in your professional community. Maybe it's your local community. Maybe you're featured in the media. And most influencers often have some sort of online presence. Just as being part of this webinar today is part of an online presence that, you know, adds to your visibility. Okay, the third core soft skill that I thought about is connectivity. And I think Mark was talking about that a little bit already today. Influencers partner with other industry leaders, and they foster those relationships with people of influence. So for you to be an influencer, you need to connect with other people that are recognized as leaders and develop those relationships. And I think with this, you actually can be recognized as a thought leader, because when you're innovative, and you've got ideas, those ideas, come into your head and they start as thoughts. And I think about you being thought of as a thought leader and connecting with these other industry leaders to foster these relationships. I think clarity is really important if you're going to be an influencer and you're going to be able to help people adapt innovations. By clarity, I say you really have to know what you do and who you do it for. And so I was really clear with myself that teacher education is, my gift. It's an art. It's what I studied, and I was really clear who I wanted to do it for. And I'm really big with the T&I teachers and with the healthcare science teachers. So if I had tried an innovation, say with English teachers or social studies teachers, I would have been out of my area and I wouldn't have had that clarity, because I knew what I do and who I wanted to do it for. So I think that's an important core soft skills that influencers need to possess and use. And the final one that I chose, and again, I only chose 5 because of the time of our webinar, is initiative. And we find that people who are innovators at work are able to take on this additional work to innovate and continue to deliver their normal work duties with excellence. And that is part of the criteria actually in the PACE Innovation Award, that they're able to do this as sort of an addition to their regular work. So I call that initiative. But I'm not saying you do everything. So please don't take it that way, that I think you have to do everything at your organization. I think you're doing your job, but you see a need for this innovation and you have the initiative to take that on, because you're probably not going to be paid extra for it. But you will have powerful influence in a positive way. So Andrea, if you could flip into my next slide, please. Okay, so then what I did is I just chose, again, I went with 5 because I figured that's what I'd have time to talk about with you. 5 strategies for success if you are influencing others in an organization. And the first one is interpersonal awareness. And really, to be an influencer, you need to identify other people's concerns and then position your ideas so that they address other people's concerns. And for this strategy, you have to be a good listener, because you have to understand what other people's concerns are. And beyond that, many times others in your organization aren't going to vocalize their concerns. So you almost have to develop this sixth sense where you can get at their concerns. And a lot of times they may not have trust yet in that relationship where they're going to vocalize it, or your organization, whether it's industry or education, they may not feel safe in that particular organization to voice those concerns. So if you can master that art of picking up a vibe, and it's a vibe of an underlying discomfort, you may be able to help someone through it and, quote, sell your innovation because of that. So to positively influence others, you must be able to listen to what is spoken and to what is left unsaid. So I think that's a #1 strategy for you. So your second strategy that I chose to hone in on for you is a common vision. And with a common vision, that's showing how your ideas support your organization's broader goals. So if you want to influence and you have an innovation, you better know those broader goals, and then you better be able to couch your approach with showing that you have a common vision with that organization. So if you have a lot of credibility, you may be able to leverage this by demonstrating that your ideas are in line with the big picture of what your department or your organization is trying to accomplish. And for this type of work, you will need to have the rank and clout to connect with your organization's value of what your innovation supports. So, you know, again, we're leaders. We're talking about this from a leadership perspective. And I realize everybody on the webinar is a leader. And so I assume that you're at the point where these would make sense to you and you'd be able to use them. The next one, which we all talk about, Andrea and Mark talk about this a lot and work on it, is that relationship building. Taking time to get to know others, you know, not being buried in your office or buried away from campus all the time. You need to take that effort, and everybody really should start focusing on this strategy, because it takes a long time to learn how to recognize valuable contacts, and even longer to build high value relationships with them. But I will tell you, it's time well spent, and that those highest value contacts that you're going to have are very busy people. Very busy, just like you. And they only associate, or they try to associate with people that they feel they'll get some mutual benefit from. So it's really worth time fostering that relationship. So, but I'll be honest with you, it's more difficult to build that type of relationship that will result in that support when you need it for your innovation. It takes a long-term investment in time, consistent contact, and really an investment in emotional energy to take that interest in others. And I can see Andrea shaking her head.
Totally. It is
Yeah.
energy. It is
Yeah.
energy. It
Mhm.
requires a great amount of energy
It
to do that.
definitely,
Yeah.
influencers have a great, and innovators have to have a great deal of energy for sure. Would you flip to the next slide for me?
Sure.
Thank you. So the
You-
next, perfect. The next one is logical persuasion. So to be an influencer, I think you need to know how to do the argument for logical persuasion, that you use logical reasons, expertise, and data when you're convincing and persuading others. And I'll say logical appeal can be very effective, but only in specific contexts, such as if you're trying to do a systematic comparison for your innovation, or you're trying to do a formal business proposal. That's when logical persuasion really pays in. However, I will tell you, the best argument in the door won't get you in the door in an informal network. So if you're trying to work with people in an informal network, which I call the hidden network, and I think all of you in your organizations probably know there is that hidden network. And I will say this is kind of tongue in cheek and as a joke, because I am in the South, and we call those the good old boys and good old girls network in the South. But I like to call it the hidden network because that sounds a little bit more professional and maybe not so negative. But if you're trying to break in with those people with your innovation, don't assume that logic will automatically win the day, because that is definitely a different type of persuasion. So I go to my final strategy then, which will help you with that. And I call it impact management. And that's choosing the most interesting approach. And by that, I mean the most interesting approach to the people that are going to be listening to you. Are you going to be talking to someone that is a very concrete and detail-focused person? Or are you going to be talking to someone trying to sell your innovation to someone who is more creative and relationship focused? And you really need to know that. And I know Mark and Andrea deal a lot with that in their typing of individuals and things like that. And we know that if you have somebody that is relationship focused, you're going to have to jump in with an argument or a persuasion that will go towards building a relationship. Now you can get in your logical part and how it's going to help, but you know, to get into the door with them, you're not going to start with the logic, you're going to start with the other. So that's why I call this choosing the most interesting approach, because you have to think about people. So for some people, a strong emotional appeal will outweigh any logical explanation. And if you know who you're trying to influence, you'll know what they need in order to be positively influenced, as we were talking about. So if you have limited information about the people you're trying to influence, you're going to be ineffective. You have to have some good information about those that you are dealing with. And so I chose that little graphic at the bottom of the road splitting because I thought that kind of maybe visualized that point that I was trying to make for you. Let's see how much time I have left. Just a couple minutes. And I want to spend that time talking to you about the PACE Awards so you know about that. Do we have time to go on with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Of
Okay.
course we do.
Okay, so let's, oh, I wanted to say, of course, the most important thing in influencing people is they have to trust you and you have to learn to build that trust. So that's all I'm going to say about that slide.
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about that PACE Innovation Award a little bit. So I wanted to give you a description of what the award is, and I'm not going to read this slide to you, but if you just leave it up a minute, Andrea, everybody can read what this award encompasses.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Got it.
Whenever you think it's time, you can change it. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about the criteria for that Innovation Award, and I really hope that you'll be thinking about that because I think everybody here is probably an innovator and is probably doing or has done something that would give them a good chance to submit for this award. And so the award is judged on several things. And one of the things that we look at when judging this award is that when you're describing your innovation and what you've done in your organization is that you have a needs assessment. And that's just clearly a description of need. Some people, I've heard it called an environmental scan. I tend to use needs assessment because I came out of instructional design. And so that's the word we use. But I know when I work in career tech, a lot of times they'll call that an environmental scan. And I think we're talking about the same thing. So when people are judging your write-up for this award for the first category, which is that needs assessment, they would be looking at that need was clearly described in your write-up. They'd be looking at the needs assessment that was conducted, and they'd want to see that your needs assessment would show a discrepancy between the beginning and the desired conditions. In other words, your innovation, what are you walking into? What's there right now? What are your desired conditions when you're done? They would look for, have you included all the stakeholders in your needs assessment? So for example, when I was putting my program together, I had stakeholders at the university that I was trying to sell this program to. I had stakeholders at the county offices that were looking for places to send their teachers to get their teacher training or education. I was looking at the teachers themselves to see, when I put this program together, would it be something that would be useful to them? Would they like it? Would it seem reasonable? Would it match what they needed to know? So I had several groups of stakeholders, and then I was putting in for a grant from our State Department of Education. So I had to speak their language and look at them as a stakeholder. So I had to describe how I had included each of these stakeholders as I was trying to put this together. And actually, the stakeholders really sold it for me. Once I had the stakeholders bought in, they were going to make this thing happen. I could almost step back and watch it kind of spin into control, which was great. We'd also look at the results of your needs assessment, that you did your needs assessment and you use those results then to guide your plan for your innovation. And then we would look at your action plan, and we would like to see that you had clear outcomes which flowed from that needs assessment. So that's the first part of that award and what the criteria looks at. The second part of the award, the judges would look at your innovation or the originality of your innovation. And they'd look to see that it showed insight, that it identified a problem, and that it created a solution. They'd also look to see, and this is in your write-up, you'd be explaining this, that it was unique to the institution, for which it was created, whether it was your business institution or educational institution. And here's the word that we've been talking about, positive change, throughout this webinar, that the innovation introduces significant positive change for the institution. And again, that could be a business, industry, a service institution, whatever. We would look at that the innovation introduced was beyond your normal scope of work. We would look that you clearly described your innovation and that the finished product or the product goal was clearly described. So those are the first two. The third criteria of this award is ROI, which means return on investment. And we look to see that your innovation was fully implemented or mostly implemented along the way, that it created value to your organization through a successful product, or maybe it's a successful service. Innovations can be many things, we know. That all the required resources you needed were addressed and they were used effectively to impact that innovation. And we look in your write-up that you provide some evidence of success, and that could be a narrative, it could be testimonials from people in your organization, or maybe it's some metrics that you have, or it could be both. And then finally, we look to see that you have an ongoing evaluation plan for the innovation, which includes the stakeholders. And then the final thing that the award looks at, and I thought this was kind of interesting, is the award looks for adaptability of your innovation. And of course, when you're thinking about this award, it's all in the write-up, how you write it up and thinking about these things, which is why I'm kind of giving you these little points in the background of things that you'd like to think about. So the adaptability in that write-up section, it's looking for how difficult, simple to complex it would be to adapt this innovation to a like institution. And of course, that would be your thinking from what you learned and your write-up about it. And then we would actually be looking for that it explains the positive difference the innovation could make at a like institution. And of course, these are things that you're thinking based on what you learned and speculating moving forward. So basically, the award has the 4 points to it. And I know I went through these really quickly, but I thought if I put all these bullets on slides, your eyes would be rolling in the back of your head. So if any of you did want to email me or anything to get those specific points that I mentioned, I'd be glad to send those along to you via email. I've got them in a document. But I would like to encourage you to look at the PACE Awards. And I think we've all done something and we don't think about how innovative we were. The year that I got the award, I was asked to apply for the award and I hadn't really thought of what I had done as being all that innovative. And sometimes we just do these things at work and we don't really realize the impact and the innovation that they have. So, and there's several other awards, the National PACE Awards, and I'd like you to look at them all closely because we know there's a lot of great work out there. And so I know I've probably gone a few minutes over, but I really appreciate your participation in this PACE Leadership and Award Lunch Talk. And you've got my email there, and I love to talk with people via email. I'll be glad to address anything that you might want further information about. And thank you, Andrea and Carrie, for inviting me to this webinar.
It was our pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Dr. Burns. We're so thankful to have you with us. You know, Dr. Burns won't say this, but I will, that if it weren't for her, we would be in a different place with our PACE Awards. We nationally have a person who is our chair, but that person does not vote. So we have 5 individuals from all 5 of the regions that actually represent the vote. And so the only time the person that's the chair gets the opportunity to vote on those awards is if there's a tie. So it's very important that your region has representation on our award structure for PACE. And Dr. Burns is helping us to rewrite our criteria and use metrics so they're less subjective and they're more objective, so that we can place some numeric value to each of those awards, each of the criteria of those awards. And we're just very, very thankful for your service with that, Dr. Burns.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
And then I'm going to go back and share this just to wrap us up here. Hopefully I can, there we go, pull that up. And I'm sort of hodgepodging around here from a standpoint of some PowerPoints. I apologize. But next step for our next series, our next session, please go ahead and mark your calendar. We'd love to have you. On March 31, we'll be showcasing Lisa Martino. She's going to be speaking about building effective teams in CTE. And then Carrie, the next one.
Yeah, and then after that, we're going to have Patrick Burke with the ECMC Foundation in April. And so we're really excited to have him, and Andrea and I have both worked with him through the post-secondary leadership success program. So we hope that you'll join us for both. And we also have our next round of webinars coming up at 2. So we hope that you'll join us for that as well.
Yes, definitely. Mark and I will be doing one here, I guess, Mark, in about 20 minutes. So we'd love to have you on our next call. Can we drop that in the chat? Is Sophia still on? No. But is there a way to drop that?
Yes,
I guess the link for the webinars. Yeah, that'd be super, Sophia. Thank you. We appreciate Sophia Alston. She is our post-secondary person at ACTE, and she'll be dropping that in the chat for you to be able to register for our on the hour. It comes right after this one. Leadership, PACE leadership. I guess they're webinars, aren't they? PACE leadership webinars that Mark and I co-facilitate. So again, thank you, Dr. Burns. We appreciate your time today. We have some options there for professional development coming up, and we'd love to have you all with us. Of course, there's mine and Carrie's contact information as well. You're always welcome to call our phones or email us. We'd be proud to visit with you.
Thanks
That's
so
all.
much, Dr. Burns.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mark, I just saw your funny comment. Thank you so much for that comment.
Yeah, listen, you're amazing, and you are what good looks like when I think of CTE. So thank you for everything you do for us, and thank you for sharing.
Okay, thank you. See y'all next time.
So
Thanks,
take
ladies.
care. Bye-bye, Dr. Burns.
Bye.
Okay, can we push not recording anymore here, Sophia?